Greetings, family. We are live. Welcome, welcome. It's Wisdom Wednesday. You know what that means. Sister Shanice is in the house with my special guest.
You've got an echo.
Wisdom Wednesday. You know what that echo is telling me that we are indeed live on YouTube. So family, come through the door, put the word out. Let's get the link. Actually, let me get the link from YouTube so I can start sharing it with family and friends around the world, as we do. You know how we do. Got to multitask around here. Unlike some radio channels and TV channels, they have, you know, a whole team in the back end, don't they? We're multitasking. So as you can
Sister
see,
Shanice is multitasking. I don't even understand these machines.
So we have our beautiful Empress, Queen Asata, in the house. We welcome you, Queen. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the platform today. And, you know, I'm going to give you a formal introduction, but before I give you the formal introduction, I wonder if you can just greet the audience with some opening remarks while I fire off the link to some people around the world. Go ahead, beloved.
Greetings, African family. As Sister Shanice has already said, my name is Nzinga Asata, and I am the author of the book, Women in the Garvey Movement. I've been a long-time activist working in this community, highlighting the need for Africans to unite and develop services that will advance our people, and also part of the reparations movement. In fact, I've just come off of the reparations conference being held by the Global African Congress and the RMT in, I think they're in Hackney this year, but I joined the Zoom for a couple of hours earlier, and it's really going well. So, you know, for me, reparations has become a big thing now. Even this morning on LBC, they did a full hour talking about reparations, what it meant, asking people to phone in. So, you know, what I'd like to say on that is let's all get together, join the work that's going on to demand this. This is a just claim. You know, we're not talking about foolishness. We're talking about horrendous damage that has been done to us as a people over a long historical period. And if it's going to be put right, we have to get on the case.
Absolutely. And a lot, as you said, is happening behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. You know, there's petitions, there's marches, there's demonstrations. There are people who are out there doing the works on our behalf in terms of our fight for reparations. Do you want to maybe mention some of the organizations and, you know, maybe, or highlight some of the key works that people can get involved in? Please go ahead.
Indeed. Well, as I've already mentioned, the Global African Congress UK, and they can be found on the website. You put in Global African Congress UK, you will see them come up. You've got the Stop the Mangamizi campaign that organizes the annual reparations rebellion at Windrush Square in Brixton every year. And that's been going on for some time now. You've also got the African Remembrance Committee, which was started by Onakechi Wambu. Over the years, every year they organize, no matter how small, an event to remember our ancestors and to bring our people together. Many of the other organizations, Al Kibulan Revivalist Movement, big time steppers on the road for reparations and champions in the fight, advancing our people. You've also got obviously the CARICOM groups now in the Caribbean, putting forward an agenda. They've got a 10-point agenda for reparations. The only issue I have with some of these groups is it's a bit as if they've come now to work without the people who have historically started the movement and have been campaigning and moving and you know, doing the drive for reparations over the years. Sisters such as Sister Esther Stamford, you've got Kofi Klue, you've got, as I've said, Brother Glenroy is a big time activist in the reparations work. And, you know, for years, he has made the RMT take up the struggle for reparations and organize an annual conference. In fact, at the conference that I said earlier that I was on Zoom listening to, I think if I'm not mistaken, they said this was their 17th conference. So that's a way of making that trade union accountable for helping to inform the public about the demand for reparations, giving people education about what is the demand, why does it exist, who are the key players, what can you or I do to ensure that this moves forward. So there's a lot of work out there. I mean, again, at the conference, there was a brother from N'COBRA. N'COBRA is the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And again, they've got a massive website with information on what needs to be done, who needs to be doing it, and how you as African people can get on the case and join. These people are not going to just say, oh yes, we did a lot of damage and we're going to pay up. No, 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 no. This is going to be a big time fight. I mean, they continue to damage us. They continue to draw the resources out of Africa, out of the Caribbean, all over the world. They continue to take the resources of the poorer people. Then they complain about people coming here in boats. People come here because of the deprivation that they've created in the areas where they live. So, you know, we have a lot of work to do, and we really need to make sure we're doing part of that work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, family. As you can hear, we have an activist on the panel today, someone who has committed a lifetime towards fighting for our liberation and what we are entitled to as a people. And as our beloved Queen said, you know, they're not just going to give us reparations. They're not just going to hand it to us. They're going to fight tooth and nail not to have to give us reparations. It's up to us to get involved in the movements. It's for us to get involved in supporting the organizations that are out there doing the works. It's for us to bring our skills and talents to the table to ensure that this reparation fight, which is a just one, is one that we win. You know, when we go back to the early turn of the 20th century and we look at the works that our greats were doing, you know, all of us were involved. Our most talented, from our lawyers and doctors and politicians, you know, were all involved in bringing their skills to the table to contribute towards our liberation struggle. Now, you know, that we have so many lawyers, so many doctors, so many highly skilled and qualified people, you know, they don't seem to do very much. Very few seem to do little outside of their 9-to-5 job. Well, hang on. The real work starts when your 9-to-5 finishes, okay? The 9 to 5 are the hours and the works that you give to building this capitalist system that is oppressing us. But what are you doing now afterwards to try and undo that work so that we as a people, you know, can be liberated? And so a huge job to be done. So Queen, you know, you're absolutely amazing. You do some phenomenal works on the ground, and we have to give you credit and recognition, you know, for your tenacity, your energy, and all that you do. And when you come on this platform, you're about imparting into us and the younger generation now the works that still need to be done, and to get, you know, people motivated to get involved. So let's go over to the audience and make sure that we've got our people coming through the door, and let's welcome them as they come in. Welcome, family. Welcome. It's good to see family in the house. We've got Sister Afrijamo watching us from Ghana. Welcome. Greetings. Sister Afrijamo is one of our long-term audience members, a very active participant and supporter of this show. We love you, and we love all our audience. Sister Katrina, another, you know, big time supporter, alongside Brother Kimani, who's in the house. Welcome. We've got Amusu in the house. Welcome. He's saying huge respect to Queen Nzinga Asante for everything you have done for us. I truly appreciate how you have supported me and many others. Oh, wow. Oh, we've got Bonganu in the house saying, I'm here. Welcome, Bonganu. Welcome. Are you the same Bongo man who was at my book signing event yesterday? Let me know. I met Bongo Man yesterday. Kimani, welcome. And thank you for congratulating me on a successful book launch. It was awesome. To everyone who turned out, thank you so, so much. It was a book signing event, and not only was I signing, but the editor was in the country as well, and she was signing. It was a beautiful day. My sister, who's the editor. So thank you for those of you who came. Betty, welcome. Pithias, welcome. Mundele, welcome, welcome. Yenge Pimpa Kiambote, beloved. Saluting you, Queen Mama Nzinga. Brother Kwame Aboche. Oh, welcome. Oh, the love. They're bringing the love in the house. Oh, Betty Jenkins, everybody, we thank you so much for joining us. We have a very interesting educational program that's coming up for you today. Our sister Queen Nzinga, I'm going to introduce her to you and give you a little bit of the flavor of who this wonderful queen is that we have in the house. Let me just find her bio here. And family, you know, please share the link. You know how they shadow ban. I got that word from our Empress, Dr. Mumbi. She's been shadow banned as well. You know, they like hold it. It's like them holding onto your feet so that you're not able to take off, and they close, they stop you know, your live feed information from going out. They hold on to your numbers and your subscribers to keep you down in the hope that you'll get frustrated and go away. Well, Medea, the work's getting out there regardless. So understand it.
Indeed.
Oh, so beloved, let me introduce you to our wonderful, wonderful audience who are, you know, in the house, ready for a very informative and educational show, as always. Well, family, you are not going to be disappointed. We have a major, major mover and shaker and woman in this house, someone who we absolutely love here in our UK community. She's none other than our Queen, Nzinga Asata, BA Honours, now a retired health professional, but also an author of the book Women in the Garvey Movement. And she's also done a poster of the same title and in praise of our ancestors. She was born in Jamaica. Yeah, man, jammed on Jamaica. Right? Up all of the Jamaican, them in the house. Jamaican drunk away there. Born in Jamaica. And she's a founding member of the Alliance of African Women, a Pan-African Garveyite organizer, community activist, mother and grandmother. And she's also currently a member of
a great-grandmother now too.
Great-grandmother. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. A member of GAC UK committee, also a member of Friends of the BCA, that's the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton, and she helps them with their fundraising and their membership recruitment drive. She's a treasurer of the Friends of the local youth club in her area where she lives, and there are predominantly mainly African young people that attend that youth centre, hence why she's there. She's been organising in our community since the 1980s, started as a member of the fundraising group for the Association of Black Social Workers and Allied Professionals, fighting to prevent Black children from being fostered and adopted outside of our community. And my, doesn't that fight need to continue? That was a major, major fight during those times. I remember it so well, you know, and they started actually trying to recruit Black families to foster Black children. But the minute the campaign, you know, kind of goes away, not only do they start putting our children back into the homes of Caucasians, but they even put them in the homes of these families that have two men or two women heading up the families. And, you know, this is causing a problem for our children for the future, as we know, because it's just totally outside of our culture. So we need people like our Queen who are prepared to organize these campaigns and to do the works, you know. And so she did that work and did it admirably as well. And she was also the secretary for the Black Action Group back in Balham, along with 5 other sisters. She created the Harriet Tubman Sisters Foundation, which organized political education for women at the Black Action Group offices in Balham. And at the time, she raised funds as well for Ethiopia, the Ethiopian famine appeal, and supported Africa in the 21st Century Conference, which was held at Battersea Town Hall back in '85. Following the shooting, it was a dreadful shooting of Cherry Gross in Brixton and the death of Cynthia Garrett. And both of these deaths were caused by police malpractices, weren't they? The death of Cynthia Garrett in Tottenham, which caused the police and herself and another sister from HTS to become part of the organizing committee, along with Sis Imelda Inyang and Brother Minka from the Black Unity and Freedom Party, who arranged the Black People for Justice demonstration, which took place. And she was one of the chief stewards at that demonstration. In 1987, Imelda Inyang and our beloved Queen were the two executive women who served on the Marcus Garvey Centenary Committee, formed to celebrate the 100th year of our Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So now we're in colours tonight, the red, the black and the green family.
Nice.
And she was treasurer and fundraising coordinator and personally sponsored the raffle, which was drawn by Queen Mother More at the Centenary Conference held in Manchester back in May of that year. You know, there's so much more we can say about our sister. She's worked alongside other great sisters like Moyawa Tiafa, and who's a Pan-Africanist grassroots woman organizer. She's worked amongst some greats, family. You know, I am privileged to, know this sister. I'm privileged to have worked alongside her myself. You know, she is a gem and a jewel within our community. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zip and I'm going to hand you over so you can hear from our beloved Queen, Mother Nzinga Asata.
Thank you, Sister Shanice. Greetings, African family. It's always a privilege to share information with our community and to offer gems of advice and support, and also ideas about how we can all add to the work that needs to be done, that must be done, and that has to be done if we actually really and truly want to overthrow the systems that have been exploiting and oppressing us for numerous years. As Sister Shanice said, tonight we're going to be talking about the women in the Garvey movement, although, as I was saying to Sister Shanice earlier, it is Garvey month, but there's so much about Marcus Garvey already that I don't think we need to make him the focus of this evening's presentation, because often the work of the women is neglected. And I was mentioning earlier that if, I don't know how many of you have many books on Garvey and Garveyism, but I've got most of the ones that exist. And when you consider that the scholars who were writing were being, most of them got the information from Garvey's second wife, Amy Jakes Garvey. There's hardly even a paragraph highlighting her great contribution. So as I said, I just want to put that out there for us so that we understand that the work of our women is to be valued, celebrated, and highlighted, because they have made some serious contributions to the advancement of our people. So I'm going to start. This is my book, Women in the Garvey Movement, for those of you who have not seen it before. It's available from myself. There used to be copies in the Black Cultural Archives, but they're out of stock at this time. And I want to share a poem from the book on page 60 for those of you who already have the book, and it's called The Incomparable Black Women. And I read this poem when I launched the book on CVM television in Jamaica, and it got quite a good acclaim. So it's called The Incomparable Black Woman. Is there any other race of people on this planet who can expect such leadership, dedication, and strength from their women? Black people have much to thank Black women for. Black women, the strong, confident ones, the quiet, unassuming ones, the women who are always there for the race, the women who are always there, working hard, giving their all, being mother and sometimes father, being everything to our community. The Black woman, mother of creation, strong, oh so strong Black woman. What is so very sad is that many Black men fear her strength, fear her strong spirit, and fail to love, honor, and protect her, the Black woman, mother, daughter, wife, sister, aunt, grandmother, Black woman, mother of all creation, Black woman, the original guardian angel. So that's that's the start of where we want to move on from today, because the women who make up the Garvey movement were a phenomenal body of women. I'm going to focus today on, I'm going to give a brief account of the work that the women did. Then I'm going to look a bit at the Black Cross nurses in particular, because that was a major organization serving our community within the framework of the Garvey movement. And then I will look at some individual women and what their contributions were. Some of you will have heard of certainly Marcus Garvey's first and second wives. People usually know Amy Ashwood and Amy Jakes Garvey, but people like Madame de Mina, Adelaide Casely Hayford, and so on. Often people don't know of those other women. And just to also fill in the fact that the Garvey movement is estimated, and Professor Tony Martin highlights this in one of the books, where it is estimated the movement had a membership of over 6 million people, and at least half of that membership were women. So we're looking at 3 million active women all over the entire world, all supporting this Garveyite philosophy of wanting to overthrow colonialism and exploitation of our people, and willing to step forward to be part of that challenge. So let's look at the women of the movement. So one of the things that I've got on my poster is that the women of the Garvey movement created their own image of the Black woman. And this differed from the 19th century ideal and from the visions of womanhood held by many men, even within the UNIA-ACL. Now, the UNIA-ACL was Garvey's organization, that was the title, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. The participation of women in the leadership of the organization is one of the most striking features of the association. Female leadership in most organizations at the time was very rare. The UNIA both insisted on it as a principle and in practice produced many dynamic women in leadership positions. The leadership styles of the women differed, but they were all powerful in their own right. And I will just quote you a simple quote from a sister called Satire Earle, who was a staunch Garveyite and one of the lady presidents of the St. Andrews division of the UNIA in Jamaica. And one of her rallying cries was, "Wake up, men. If you are afraid to carry on, I will organize a committee of women and launch out against the capitalists in this island and leave you drowsy men behind." So just to show you the focus and the power of the women who were moving behind Garvey and helping to organize in that institution. Wow. So what is the legacy of the women? The women of the UNIA and ACL have left behind an inspirational historical legacy on which contemporary women and men are able to draw to advance the cause of African liberation. As an African people, we know the importance of looking back throughout our history in order to understand how this shapes our lives in the present. Many of our great scholars, Dr. Joseph Ben Buchanan, who recently joined the Ancestors, as well as other ancestors, Dr. John Henry Clark, Sister Beverly Hamilton, and I'm going to mention Beverly later on because she was a sister that I met when I went to Jamaica in 1987 to be a part of the Garvey Centenary Conference. She was a staunch Garveyite, bringing together all of the older Garveyites who were in Jamaica at the time and organizing events across the island to highlight the work that Garvey organization had done. So I will mention her. She has passed on, but she has left a legacy behind. Sister Beverly Hamilton and others have advised us that the past, the present, and the future all merge to shape our direction and to help us plan a way forward to a better future for the generations to come. Garveyite women of the 20th century participated in and led a movement which drew women out of the home and immersed them in public life, creating an image of women as intellectuals, women as policymakers, as managers, and as activists. Their life work has created and left a legacy of the African woman as someone who has the right to demand her rightful place in the liberation struggles of our people. Women have an essential part to play in moving the race forward and should not sit on the sidelines waiting to be asked to join and to make their contribution to race work. I want to share a bit of information with you from the book, Garvey, His Work and Impact, which just highlights some of the ways in which women were organizing. So here we go. Now, Amy Jakes in this particular document states that Black women are not traitors. They are not cowards. They are truly the better half of Black men. The masses need intelligent, dedicated leadership from women. Women don't want to jostle men for jobs. They want what they merit and to which they contribute their God-given qualities in trying to liberate this civilization from greed and hate. Now, apart from the Garveyites, there were many other women active in the leadership of the movement, both at a local level and at the level of the executive. Henrietta Vincent Davis, who I'm going to mention later on, was a President General and international organizer for the organization. She was also part of a delegation that was created by Garvey to go to Liberia to negotiate space for them to relocate the Garvey organization to that country. But as we know, pressure is always put on the leadership in these countries, and as a result of which the president of Liberia at the time declined for them to actually set up and relocate the Garvey organization there. So in addition to women being involved in the leadership, large numbers of women participated in different activities. They organized cultural events, fundraising events. They also went out, as you'll hear later, about Black Cross nurses. They provided nutritional information in the community, health and social care for people who needed nursing and healthcare assistance, and so on. I'll just go back now to what I was saying earlier about the legacy. So the Garvey women also were shaping our history as a people, and they identified what we as a race are doing and what we are achieving. There were highlights about what we can do to add to nation building. Marcus Garvey himself says that the ends that you serve that are selfish will lead you only to yourself, but the ends that you serve that are for all in common will leave you even into eternity. So that just shows you the strength and the power of this organization. There was that determination that permeated the whole system to make changes, not just talk about making changes, but actually to actively get up and ensure that they actually happen. Now, their example shows us how to create a historical legacy. What they've also done is added to the world knowledge about who we are as a people and the way in which we can actively change our condition in the world. So what is the legacy that was left by the women of the Garvey movement for us to build on? Collectively, as you've already heard, women of the movement left us a legacy which I don't think many of us in contemporary times can compare with. We have a large number of dedicated activists, Africans who believed in our right to have access to resources through the development of small businesses within the UNACL. Many women were executive members, board directors, lady presidents, radio presenters, editors, and contributors to the Negro World newspaper, which, as many of you Garveyites will know, the Negro World was the mouthpiece of the organization, a newspaper that was circulated all over the world. And in fact, when the colonizers and the criminals who had our people under enslavement learnt more about the Negro World newspaper, they made it a crime to be even found with a copy on you. And so what happened then was that soldiers and people who were traveling used to hide it in their travel documents and their clothes, so that they could circulate it in different parts of the world. So it just goes to show you how determined these people are to prevent us from organizing and mobilizing amongst ourselves to change our condition. Women such as Amy Bailey, a professional teacher, organized events in Jamaica. They formed the Save the Children Fund because of the trying times that people were experiencing in our country, and so on. So let's move on. We can see that these are women who were not afraid to step forward and to take their place as powerful leaders within the Garvey organization. Women, you know, we had a journalist, very young woman, just in her 30s, who used to provide the editorials for all of the UNIA propaganda. She would create the menus for the restaurants, because the UNI had its own restaurants, and all of the documentation for the conferences and other cultural events that took place. So I'm going to move on now, because I want to just talk a little bit more about the Black Cross Nurses in particular, which was a large organization. For those of you who have any of the calendars or any of the booklets on Garvey, you will see them kitted out in their uniforms. And when Garvey had the annual conventions, they would march. In fact, they said at one point in one of the books that the line of the march could be up to 10 miles long. So you can imagine the mobilizing that took place to get all of these people together. So, as I said, we're focusing on highlighting the excellent contribution of Garveyite women in terms of their sterling efforts to improve conditions for our people. We have in the Garvey movement, the UNIA had a variety of auxiliary groups within it, which reflected the various skills, the ages, and the interests of organization membership, as well as the different objectives within the program of the UNIA ACL for African upliftment, self-reliance, and nation building. The UNIA auxiliaries included the African Legion, an all-male military group, and its converse was the African Motor Corps, which consisted of females trained in mechanics and military discipline. Then we also had the Black Cross Nurses, along with the African Motor Corps. This was established by one of the ladies that I'm going to talk about later, Henrietta Vinton Davis. In 1921 in Philadelphia, she decided that we needed to provide a whole range of services for the Black community in the United States. And just as a reminder to people, we're talking about a time when they were lynching Black people for no reason other than that you existed on this planet. Black people were having to protect themselves in whatever way they could, because they could just be going out for a family event and were kidnapped and tortured and terrorized by these people. So, you know, services were really necessary, and Henrietta Vinton Davis stepped forward to provide this service. Throughout America, in many areas, different branches of the UNIA was established, and the women were collectively coming together to provide medical services to Black families and to provide health education so that people could be informed about the kind of actions that they could take to improve their health status, etc. Some of these services also focused on maternal and child welfare, birth control, and organized community workshops focusing on nutrition and good sanitation, because again, things like dysentery and other health issues were prevalent at the time. So these areas of health education were quite important to ensure the health and welfare of our people was kept to a high standard. Now, all of this was aimed at improving the conditions and life chances of our people, in a similar way that people such as Auntie Jean are doing today through their workshops and their various meetings. The Black Cross nurses contributed to relief efforts in areas in the United States during the 1920s, which were areas which were affected by flooding. You all remember, can't remember the name of it now, Katrina, was it Katrina? Hurricane that destroyed the lives of so many people. And clearly, without establishments that focus on our needs, they'll leave you there to die, because they don't care that you're a taxpayer and that you are contributing to the country. You're not relevant in their agenda. So it was really important, I can imagine at that time, for us to have our own services. The Black Cross nurses were described as wearing stunning white uniforms, which attracted great attention. They took part, as I've said earlier, in the annual UNIA parades, which were said to be at least 10 miles long and included all of the divisions of the organization, and they would march through Harlem. And in fact, I remember in the 90s when I went to visit my sister in the United States, they would lock off an area in Harlem near Marcus Garvey Park, and they would, it's called Harlem Week, and they would sell and trade amongst each other African carvings, fabrics, all different artifacts from the continent and from the Caribbean, and from obviously items that were made in the USA by Africans who lived there. And that was just great, a whole week locked off, focusing on African people. Yeah, so let's get back to what we were saying. So they were wearing stunning white uniforms, which attracted attention and took part in the parades. They sang the UNIA anthem. I don't know how many of you know the UNIA anthem. Now, I can't sing, so I'm not even going to try to sing. I'm also recovering from a sore throat, but it's called Ethiopia, the land of our fathers, the land where the gods love to be. It's a brilliant anthem. You know, it has such, when you're singing it, it makes you want to do a really good job, because it's quite, the verses are very inspiring. And then they would also carry the big red, black and green flag of the Garvey organization. I don't know if any of you saw it, but on there was a little video going around on WhatsApp where they were celebrating Garvey and Garveyism. And, you know, it just looked so wonderful to see them remembering and highlighting the work of this great warrior and this great organization that so many contributed and dedicated their lives to. So the Black Cross nurses also operated as nurturers in the community and across the world, because remember, I mentioned at the beginning that there were branches of the organization. In fact, in a booklet that I've got, which I bought when I went to visit Liberty Hall. Liberty Hall is the Garvey Multimedia Museum at 76 King Street in Jamaica, downtown Kingston. And when you go in there, there's all kinds of videos and artifacts about Garvey from Puerto Rico, Costa, all over the world, Panama, blah, blah. It's all there for you to see. And there's a massive Garvey booklet that it's quite a big booklet, and it highlights and shows you the different countries where the memberships were, how many organizations, well over 1,000 organizations, different parts of the world. So these are all good things to know, and to, if you're visiting Jamaica, to go along and visit that new multimedia museum and get some of the artifacts. Okay, so they operated soup kitchens, food bank, a bit like the ones that are going on today. So it just goes to show you that there's nothing new under the sun. They provided clothing for the needy, visited the sick, and their focus and support was to the more marginalized groups in our community, and they wanted to uplift them. So other responsibilities that they had, were that they would be also, some of them, lady presidents, and managing local divisions and holding responsibility for ensuring the smooth operation of different organizations. So there was a juvenile Black Cross nurses, in addition to the older women, you had a junior group as well that had to be trained and supported and nurtured into the skills that they wanted to impart to them. And the lady presidents within the group had responsibility for ensuring that members of the Universal African Motor Corps received adequate training in military drills, automotive driving skills, also learning how to drive motor cars, taxis, and ambulances, because they obviously had to be ready to deliver services as and when it was required. A big concern of a number of the women in the movement were how responsibilities were managed, as their leadership roles did not give them autonomy, but made them always accountable to men in the organizations. And they were not happy with this at all. And this led to many challenges of the leadership structure and demands for more autonomous leadership positions for the women without male oversight. But as we know, this was the kind of how things operated at the time. And so whilst women were challenging these systems that existed, that didn't give them the power and autonomy that they needed, we also acknowledge that that was the way things were at that time. That doesn't mean that we can't stand up and fight for change and demand change, even within our own systems. If we don't like what's going on, then we need to identify how we can change things. So in fact, in 1922, at the UNIA convention that was held in Harlem, there was a challenge by the women regarding male leadership and the policy of women being subordinate to men. And the women raised the issue of the lack of proper recognition of their contribution and aired a list of grievances with recommendations designed to improve the status of women in the organization. So I'll just cite a few of the points that they raised. Women wanted total control of their areas of responsibility. They wanted women to occupy senior positions on every committee. They wanted women to head up some of the offices and fieldwork sections of the organization. They also wanted women to be given the autonomy to create and formulate plans which would elevate their status within the organization. Also for Henrietta Vinton Davis, who was a very senior member of the organization, to have authority to formulate plans for African women all over the world so that they could function without being restricted in their roles and activities. So we can see clearly that although the UNIACL was one of the greatest organizations of all time, there were still areas that needed to be challenged, and Garveyite women were not backward in standing up to demand changes which they thought were appropriate to their needs and to bring real change into the organization. Now, this is important for all of us alive in society today. When we see areas in society that need correction, that need change, let us not wait for another person to raise the issue. Let us have the courage to take a stand ourselves. I'm going to move on now to speak to some of the actual women who worked in the Garvey movement and what it was that their contributions were. I mean, if we look at the life of Amy Ashwood Garvey.
Okay, so I'll share screen now.
Okay, yes, thank you very much.
I did grab an image of the Red Cross nurse, the Black Cross.
That's lovely. Yes, the Black Cross nurses, brilliant. So
yeah.
you can see how well they looked and, you know, ready for business. Indeed, very great. Thank you very much. And as I was saying earlier, they formed part of the 10-mile long convention that Garvey, I'm sure some of you have seen Garvey getting into his carriage dressed up in his military uniform to go and conduct the UNIA events that was always organized annually. Yes. Excellent. Thank you very much, Sister Shanice.
And the women must have been very progressive indeed, you know, for them wanting to push for greater autonomy so that they can move forward without restrictions. You know, they obviously felt that there was more that they could be doing. They wanted to see more action.
And they were doing a whole heap, but to be honest with you, I mean, there's a Jamaica journal that I bought when I was in Jamaica for the Garvey Centenary Conference in '87. And, you know, it highlighted the different women and the work that they were producing. And I mean, when we get on to Amy, I mean, well, all of the women have their own actual independent status in terms of the work that they contributed. Amy Ashwood Garvey, when she met Garvey at East Queen's Baptist Church in Kingston, she was just 17 years old, and she was one of the key debaters at a debating conference. And Garvey was attending. He didn't know her and she didn't know him, but he was cheering her on because she was such a great orator in terms of her debating skills. And then Garvey waited for her when the debating was finished and walked with her to the train station. And he admired her. At the time, she was 10 years his junior, but he admired her because she was such a strong person. And as you know, in 1914, they formed the UNI and launched the UNI ACL. Now, lots of the meetings took place in her family's business. Her father had business in Panama and also in Jamaica. And so they used to use the facilities for the UNIA meetings, you know, because obviously renting outside properties was quite expensive, and they were just a fledgling organization. And in fact, in some of the her work, this is Amy Ashwood Garvey, and I'll just tell you a little bit about her. She was born in 1897. She was a staunch Pan-Africanist activist. She was a playwright and a co-founder and first wife of Marcus Garvey. She was born in Port Antonio, Jamaica, but spent a good part of her childhood in Panama, where her family had business interests. She returned to Jamaica as a teenager and attended Westwood High School in Trelawney. And I've already said that she met Marcus Garvey at East Queen Street Baptist Church in Kingston. They developed a friendship which led to their marriage in December 1919 in New York. Amy became the first founding member of the UNIA ACL along with Garvey. She was one of the secretaries also of the UNIA, as well as later becoming one of the directors of the Black Star Line Shipping Corporation. After her divorce from Marcus Garvey, she continued her commitment to African people's development. She opened the Florence Mill Social Club in Carnaby Street, in London, founded the Nigerian Progress Union, supported the West African Students' Union. She worked with Sam Manning, a Trinidadian playwright, helping to produce plays such as Brown Sugar, which toured the United States as well as the Caribbean. There was also another play called Hey Hey that they produced together. She also helped to form the International Friends of Abyssinia, the International African Service Bureau, and the London Afro People's Centre at number 1 Bassett Road in Northwest 10. Now, 1 Bassett Road, I actually have visited on 2 occasions. One, a film was created of her life and also of Claudia Jones by the Octavia Foundation in 2011. And I was asked to be part of that, talking about the women in the Garvey movement. That film is actually on YouTube, if anyone wants to find it. It's called Women of Change. And if you note the Octavia Foundation, it was produced by the Octavia Foundation, and includes 2 other women other than Claudia Jones and Amy Ashwood. And there is also a blue plaque that was cited at 1 Bassett Road by Nubia Jack, highlighting that Amy Ashwood, worked from that address to provide services to our people. Now, at that center, she used to organize services for our people who had come back from fighting in European wars. She also had meetings there with people like Kwame Nkrumah used to meet there, George Padmore, the 5th Pan-African Congress that was held in Manchester. in 1945 was actually planned in that facility. And CLR James said that she was one of the best cooks that he had ever met. So it just highlights not that she was just a cook, she was an organizer. She set up, how many people set up a social club and restaurant in Carnaby Street? Yeah. These are the kind of people that were part of that Garvey movement. And let's see, what else is there that I want to tell you about her? She actually traced her roots back to the Ashanti people of Ghana when she visited Ghana. And in the film that I spoke of, Professor Tony Martin talks about the way in which she said that the stories that were told to her by her Granny de Bass, who had been kidnapped and taken from Ghana to Jamaica, was what led her to find her people in the Ashanti region when she traveled to Africa. She's actually buried in an unmarked grave in the Calvary Cemetery in Kingston, Jamaica. And I've already told you about the honor of the blue plaque. The film is actually titled Hidden Her Stories, and it's a DVD that you can download from YouTube. And there is also a book about her life produced by Professor Tony Martin, which is titled Amy Ashwood Garvey, Pan-Africanist Feminist, and Garvey #1. And it was published in 2007. Moving on, we'll look at Henrietta Vinton Davis and her contribution to our people's growth and development. Now, Henrietta Vinton Davis was born in 1860 and died in 1941. She was born in Maryland, United States, and by the age of 15 years, she had passed all the necessary examinations and was awarded the position of teacher in the public school system. She subsequently was invited to speak at a Garvey meeting at the Palace Casino in Harlem, New York City, and she became very interested in Garvey's work and gave up her career to join the UNIA ACL. Vinton Davis was dedicated, committed, a truly courageous woman who gave much to the advancement and growth and development of people of African origin. Prior to joining the UNIA, she also worked with Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, you can look him up, another great Pan-Africanist of his time, who led great marches and fights against the abolition of the enslavement of our people. She worked in his office as a clerk in the office of the Recorder of Deeds, and she was the first African woman to be allocated such an appointment. She was one of the finest elocutionists and a brilliant Shakespearean actress. She was described by Garvey as the quintessential Garveyite because of her dedication and her commitment. He also proclaimed her the greatest woman of the African race in that day. She was one of the leading women in the organization, being one of the first international organizers. She was a director of the Black Star Line and second vice president of the corporation. During the 1920s International Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World in Harlem, she became a signatory to the Declarations of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World. At this convention, she was given the title Lady Commander of the Grand Order. So you can see Garvey loved to give people big titles, which highlighted the, how revered he thought they were. And that was because they were making a contribution, not because they were posing and pretending to be doing the work. So Lady Vinton Davis rose in ranks to become the 4th President General of the UNIA, and she established divisions in Cuba, Guadeloupe, St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands, Port-au-Prince in Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, and in Jamaica. Wow. She was the only female to be part of the delegation which was sent to Liberia by Garvey. I think I've mentioned that already. And she is, again, another one buried in an unmarked grave in the Harmony Cemetery in Maryland, United States of America. Moving on, let's see who we can find now, Sister Shanice. Yes, let's get on to the great warrior, the life and times. Now, I asked Sister Shanice to bring this up because I'm hoping that some of you will actually try to get a copy of this book. This book is a great book, The Veiled Garvey by Hewlett Yvette Taylor, and it outlines the life and times of Amy Jacques Garvey, Garvey's second wife, who was also the mother of the two Garvey children. Now, this is one of, Professor Tony Martin says that she deserves a substantial study in her own right. She was a leader in the Garvey movement. She was a journalist. She was an active speaker. She put together, without her, we wouldn't have the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, volumes 1, 2, and she actually was working on volume 3, but she died. But that was later produced by a Ghanaian scholar who credited her for that work. You know, she met with most of the scholars, Professor Henry Clark, Dr. Tony Martin, Dr. Rupert Lewis and his wife, Maureen Werner Lewis in Jamaica, and all the others, Robert Hill, all of those that have written on Garvey met this woman. Mutabaruka said he actually used to live in one of her houses because her father was a businessman, and he bought a property for each of his children. So he died very young, and when he died, she was able to use that as a business to support the family and to ensure that her brothers and sisters were all well looked after. So let's just talk a little bit about her and highlight what her contribution has been. She is described by many as one of the most remarkable women in Black history. And that was written in the Black Scholar, May to June 1970. Amy Jacques was a journalist, an activist, an author, a women's rights activist. She was a wife and a mother. She was born on the 31st of December, 1896 in Kingston, Jamaica. She attended Wolmer's High School and went to work as a legal secretary in a law firm in Kingston. Basically, she wanted to, her father wanted her to be a nurse, and there was nothing else for him. She didn't want to be a nurse. She wanted to have a bigger career. But unfortunately for him, and obviously with great sadness, he had a stroke and passed away. And so she got the opportunity to go, to not be a nurse, but to go and work in the legal firm in Kingston, where she learned much about administration and also about how to run an office, which obviously she subsequently put these skills to the use of the UNIA ACL. Let me carry on. She traveled to the United States in 1917, and after attending a UNIA meeting, she joined the organization, serving as Secretary General and Garvey's personal secretary. She married Marcus Garvey in July 1922. She was just a young wife of 26 when she produced and compiled the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, Volume 1. And this was whilst Garvey, because shortly after they married, Garvey was incarcerated in the Tombs prison in Atlanta, Georgia. And so she produced the booklet to circulate around the world because she said she wanted people to know Garvey for who he really was and not for what the propagandists were saying about him. She also traveled all over the United States along with a sister called Madame Benina, and they were raising funds for Garvey's legal defense. She contributed to the running of the organization at the time when Garvey was imprisoned. She developed into a powerful public speaker and campaigner for the rights and freedoms of African people. And she has many essays which she wrote and contributed to the Negro World newspaper. At one time, she was editor of the women's page of the Negro World newspapers. And in my book, a number of those essays are reproduced because they're really powerful contributions to the legacy that she has left, but also to the work that she wanted to encourage women to embark on at that time in our history. She was a leading authority on Garvey's life and his work. giving lectures and information about her husband's work to scholars. In 1925, she compiled volume 2 of The Philosophy and Opinion of Marcus Garvey, and she also produced her own book, Garvey and Garveyism, which many of you, and certainly people like Brother Pepperkai and also Brother Emmanuel, have copies of those books. So whenever you go to events such as the Emancipation Rebellion and other such events, you'll be able to purchase copies. The Garvey and Garveyism book was out of print for such a long time, but it's an excellent book. It gives you a really good account of her life with Garvey, sometimes no holds barred, because sometimes she spoke the truth. It's not easy living with a Garvey, you know, and you can see that in the book, because Garvey's focus was totally on the movement. Garvey almost sacrificed all of his family life for our movement. So that just goes to show you that serious commitment, which nothing could sway him from. And we give thanks for that, because we do need people who are really focused and who are wanting to achieve the purpose regardless. So the other important things to know about her is that she received the Gold Musgrave Medal from Jamaica for her work on behalf of African people. She also produced a book about Black power in America, where she highlighted how Garvey's legacy had influenced Black power in the United States of America. The other things that she contributed to was an African Study Circle in Jamaica. And during the 60s, she was invited to Nigeria by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, and also visited Ghana by invitation of Kwame Nkrumah, first president of Ghana. She died on the 23rd of July, 1973, and was given a state funeral in Jamaica. And as you know, as I've mentioned earlier, she's the mother of the 2 Garvey children, Marcus Garvey Jr., who has since passed on, and Dr. Julius Garvey, who continues to carry on some of the work of his father, indeed. Thank you, Sister Shanice. We'll move on now to our wonderful Queen Mother More. Now, many of you may know of the Saturday school that our great warrior, Reverend Huey Andrews, set up in Clapham Common at Nelson's Row. The Saturday school my children attended, both my daughter and my son, and even my granddaughter's father was an attendee, which is where my daughter met him. Oh, and Queen Mother More is somebody that I've known over many years. I have many pictures of her and myself and my children. I've also got pictures that I've lodged in the Black Culture Archives in Brixton of her. She was such a warrior. She was always telling us that we must fight and that we must not be afraid to demand reparations. You know, she says, even if we don't get a penny, the demand must be made. Wonderful, wonderful woman. Let me just share a little bit about her so that you, and you know, don't forget that a lot of this information is now available on the internet, so people can actually go and do their own research and have a look at the information that's out there, you know, because this is just a snapshot that I'm giving you today. So Queen Mother Audley More was born in New Iberia, Louisiana. She became a hairdresser at 15. Later on, after hearing Marcus Garvey speak, she joined the UNIA-ACL. She was born 35 years after enslavement was abolished. She grew up witnessing the disgraceful lynching of Black men. After joining the Garvey movement, she moved to Harlem and became a charismatic speaker and organizer, fighting for improvements in education, in housing, and for the rights of domestic workers, welfare recipients, and prisoners. Queen Mother More actively campaigned for reparation. She told us, our purpose in life is to leave a legacy for our children and their children's children. We must correct history that at present denies our humanity and our self-respect. We must restore our African personality, our culture, our industry, and our land. Queen Mother traveled throughout the Black world and remained an esteemed elder strategist, activist, and cultural warrior. In 1972, she was conferred the title of Queen Mother by the Ashanti people of Ghana. And as I've already mentioned, the school that was named after her is in Clapham, if anyone wants to go and see it. There is some work going on in the background to try to get a blue plaque to be established at that facility to highlight the legacy. Obviously, that legacy is not just Queen Mother Moores, but also now Reverend Huey Andrews, who we lost a couple of years ago. Now, in 1997, when she passed away, myself and Sister Sister Makeda Coston, and what's the other sister? Her name escapes me, but organized a memorial for her at the Yarsantewa Centre in Chippenham Mews in West London. So we have such a lot of warriors fighting on our behalf. You know, when I see how little some of us are doing today, I think to myself, how have we become so lazy? Do we think the struggle is finished? Well, I shouldn't even call it a struggle, because it's really for the rights and freedoms and to overthrow those people who have been exploiting us and our resources for so long now. You know, it really is time for them to be gone. Thank you. Let's move on now to look at, let's see who Shanice has got next. Una Martin, a great contributor. And in fact, there are some books available. If you go online, you will actually see there are some books about Una Marsden. Now, she was a massive contributor to many different aspects of our lives. She was born in 1905 in a village called Sharon's Village near Santa Cruz in Jamaica. She served as a voice for Black working Jamaicans. She was an active political champion against racism, sexism, colonialism, and all forms of oppression. She was well versed as a champion of Jamaican literature and a strong supporter of access to publishing for women. Marston's first two collections of poetry, Tropic Reverie in 1930 and Heights and Depths in 1931, showed her conditioning by the Eurocentric education that she had received in Jamaica. But she started to travel, and as a result of that travel, her work became more culturally and racially focused on and included much of the Jamaican aesthetics, which she had grown up not realizing the importance of it, because obviously, as most of us know, in a lot of our countries, the education is very colonial and doesn't actually highlight and promote the greatness of our own people. So in her life, when she began to travel around the world, she began to take more notice of what was going on in the bigger picture. She started, as mentioned that already, she was racially focused to include a Jamaican aesthetics, such as in the use of the Jamaican language, its orality, and she also began to focus on African-centered religion. Some of her work also includes African-American jazz, and this was due to her association with people like Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was a great African-American poet in his time. She wrote prolifically about the lived realities of Black people working in the different areas of Jamaica. And she traveled to London, and in London, she also began to write about the wider Caribbean people who lived in the diaspora. In 1938, she created a play called Pocomania, which explored Jamaica's indigenous religious practices. And in fact, not so long ago, I can't remember how many months ago now, I went to Peckham with my friend Dahlia at the Peckham Theatre. This play, Pocomania, was put on by Andrew Mohammed and some of his colleagues. It was a great play. It was packed out. And it really was inspiring to see this dramatized, because often, you know, we grow in our culture, but we don't actually always analyze it and see the nuances of it and how it impacts us and what affects us from that culture. I mean, there's a lot of people in Jamaica who still practice Pocomania and things like that. And in fact, Edward Siaga, if you go to the National Library of Jamaica, he has a number of books. I don't know how it came to be in business, but he have a number of books about Pocomania and that kind of cultural practice in Jamaica. You see all them first? Okay, so we talked about the play. She was also a key player in the establishment of her own BBC radio program highlighting Black people. It was called Caribbean Voices. She was also involved in a number of women's organizations, and in 1935 she was the only Black woman to attend the conference of women. It was called the International Alliance of Women's Suffrage and Equal Citizenship Conference, and she was the only woman to go there representing Jamaica. Her presentation had great impact on the event. She also subsequently acted as secretary to the exiled Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie in London, and she was a key person who helped to form the Save the Children Fund in Jamaica, which I mentioned earlier, which the aim of which was to provide support and monetary help to families who were suffering from poverty. And in the latter years of her life, she campaigned against discrimination that was being faced by Rastafarians in Jamaica. She died in 1965 in Jamaica. And as I said, there are books about her life and work on the internet that people can actually access. I think we've got a couple more women that we're going to speak about. And I definitely want to, although we haven't got a picture of Beverly Hamilton, I'm going to just speak a little bit about her when I come on. Now, this is Adelaide Casely Hayford, who was a staunch Pan-Africanist and educator of our people. She was actually married to another Pan-Africanist who was a lawyer, Casely Hayford, from Sierra Leone. She was a cultural nationalist, a feminist, an educator, and she was an active member of the UNIA and formed an organization in Freetown in Sierra Leone. She was the lady president in 1919 of this branch of the UNIA ACL. She was married to a brother called Joseph Casely Hayford in 1903. Now, he was a staunch Pan-Africanist and a lawyer in his own right. She established a technical training school in Freetown, which was specifically for girls. She traveled to America during the 1920s. Here she raised funds for her school. And during her speaking engagements, she was able to dispel the many myths which American Blacks had about continental Africans, because obviously you know that the exploiters and the colonizers had tried their very best to divide us with all of their lies about our different people and the different parts of the world that we were situated in. She focused on her school to create an African identity for the pupils, which would separate them from the European ideology that was pervasive all over the world at the time. And she wanted the girls attending to re-establish an African-centered perspective on education. The Black people in her homeland failed to support her work due to their mental enslavement, as many did to Marcus Garvey himself. But that didn't stop her from forwarding that work and trying to ensure that future generations had a different perspective. So you can see that all of these great women, they didn't sit back in their chair waiting for somebody to come and tell them what they had to do. They identified what they could do themselves and, you know, did that. You know, just coming back onto a sister called Mary McLeod Bethune, she wasn't a woman of the Garvey movement, but her mindset was in that kind of philosophy. She actually had nothing, and she decided that she was going to collect dollars, $1,111, to set up a school for Black children. And she didn't rest until, I mean, Mary, if you look her up online, she has a phenomenal legacy that she left for us through collecting this $1. So all I'm saying is that work can be achieved no matter how small you start off. You don't know where it's going to go. Okay, have we got any more pictures there, sister? Okay, now this lady, a wonderful lady called Mariam Samad. She actually is somebody that I knew personally. I met her at the Garvey Centenary Conference in Jamaica. And she actually, when she was alive, had the Black angels that the Garvey organizations developed, the Black images of the creator, Black dolls that were, and the reason she had all of this was because she was actually born into the Garvey movement. Her parents were Guyanese, and they were lieutenants in the actual movement. And so everything she did was about Garvey. I mean, she loved Garvey, although she was born in America herself, she loved Garvey. And when her husband relocated back to Jamaica when he retired, she came with him and she set up a Garvey teaching museum in part of her house where she would teach young people about Garvey and his philosophy and opinions. She also met my children. She taught them at the Marcus Garvey College in Kingston. The college was run by a brother called Dr. Nkrumah, and she taught them at that school. So she had all the different carvings and different books about Africa, a totally African-centered woman who decided to take her legacy, not just to leave it in America, but she was going to take it to Jamaica and help people to learn more about Marcus Garvey. I'll just speak a little bit about her legacy. And as I've said, she passed away. She actually passed away on the same day as Robert Mugabe in, I think it was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So Queen Mother Mariam Samad, she was born in 1922 in Harlem as Muriel Allman. Her parents were both ardent Garveyites, and her whole life was surrounded by Garvey ideas. Mariam met her husband Clarence when she was just a young girl of 14. She was then a member of the Garvey Legion. They married when she was 17 years old. Her husband was a Muslim, and subsequently the whole family adopted Muslim names. During the late 60s, they relocated to Jamaica. And while she was in America, she used to promote strong Black power ideology through her work in the different schools in Harlem. And she set up the Sankovia Nubian study group on Garveyism in New York before she relocated to Jamaica. And as I said, she taught African history at the Marcus Garvey Community College in Kingston, Jamaica. And during the 1980s, she regularly organized Kwanzaa and other Pan-African events at her home and continued to teach the life of Garvey and Garveyism in her museum at her home. During Heritage Week in 1969 in Jamaica, she was installed as the Queen Mother in a grand ceremony that acknowledged her as a great female leader. And in the 70s in Ghana, in West Africa, she again was conferred the title of Queen Mother by the people there. She likes to tell the story of when Garvey went to New Orleans to speak, and he and members of the UNIA were met by the sheriff and the others who said, Mr. Garvey, because Garvey always used to stand on a big stool to speak, and he said, Mr. Garvey, you come down from there, you will not speak today. And when he looked around, there were hundreds of Garveyites standing with their guns pointing them in the air and calling out, "Speak, Garvey, speak." And they just had to move off and leave Garvey to see. So just to highlight so many warriors. I mean, when you think of it, we have 3 million members. Remember I said earlier that there was at least 3 million members, women, because the Garvey organization had well over 6 million members. We've just covered just a few of those great, wonderful women. I'm going to briefly talk about Beverly Hamilton. We haven't got a picture of her, although I have a picture and poster of her. But why I want to mention her is that she was a devoted Garveyite. She died at a young age in 2013 in her homeland, Jamaica. Now, Beverly contributed extensively to the promotion of Garvey ideas across Jamaica, across the Caribbean, and wherever she traveled. She was a journalist, a civil servant, and a Garvey scholar. She was an active community organizer. She used to create readings of Garvey's philosophy and opinions and different cultural events, highlighting Garvey's legacy across Jamaica. On the 17th of October, 1993, with the Africa Liberation Committee, she organized a play called The Visit, which highlighted Garvey's legacy. This was performed at the Jamaica School of Drama in Kingston, and all of the different students were asked to come and present a piece on Garvey's legacy. Annually, myself and her and Sister Gerlin Bean, we used to organize Africa Liberation whenever I was in Jamaica at Connolly Hall in Kingston, highlighting and, you know, bringing to the attention of our people out there that you didn't just come here to Jamaica to land. You are an African, and you have a longer history than they're trying to tell you have. So that was the aim of organizing the Africa Liberation event, so that people could see that. She also wrote a massive paper to the Ministry of Education on how they could implement Garvey and Garveyism into the school curriculum in Jamaica. And she was one of the founding people for the Garvey Multimedia Museum, which I mentioned earlier. She was one of the founding people who ensured that that institution came into being, and it is still ongoing in Jamaica now. And, you know, this is the great work that our women have contributed. I'm going to end, if that's all right with Sister Shanice, and then do you have questions?
Yeah, let's go over to the chat. First of all, thank you so much.
One sec, I'm going to end with another poem.
Yes, go ahead.
These are my own poems that I've written.
Family in the chat, get your questions ready.
That's right. This is just a short poem. Yeah. And it's called Women Are the Backbone.
Oh, I love it already.
It's just a short little poem. Yeah. Women are the backbone of any community. It is women who keep things together. Women who rear nations. Women who, when things go wrong, they know what to do. It is women who, when there is panic, remain calm. It is women who organize things. Women are the pillars of the race. Without them, there would be no men, no children, no world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Queen Nzinga. That was phenomenal. You know, I feel as though I'm always working around the clock, but after hearing that, I feel as though I'm not doing enough.
Oh, shame on you. I'm sure you're doing as much as you can manage, Sister Shanice.
I've got to change up my work program, my work plan. I've got to be setting up schools. I've got to be running programs in those schools. I've got to be doing sessions on, you know, the philosophies and opinions of how we get young people to be, you know, get prizes for them so they can do presentations. Oh my gosh, those women. And like you said, you just touched on a few of those women, the women in the Garvey movement, and the energy and the zeal. Can you imagine? I mean, right now we've got the situation in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, of those young revolutionary leaders that have come together. And these are just 3 men. Imagine, you know, like a number of million you know,
Indeed.
of us now all rising up. And this is why the legacy of Marcus Garvey's movement and the people in the movement and the works that they did and their accomplishments is just so, so important, because
Indeed.
it's actually quite infectious. Because I don't know about everyone in the chat, but it made me feel like, you know, me not ready yet, me not start. Oh my gosh, let's go to the chat. Oh, wow. I want to rise up Brother Norman. He's gifted £20 in the chat. Thank you so much, beloved. More love to you. Brother Norman says, this is what I was made to understand in my African Center school. I was lucky to attend in Jamaica. So he came away, I believe, mostly with an understanding of Marcus Messiah Garvey and his works and the women in the Garvey movement from his school in Jamaica. But we need to have our children everywhere. And you mentioned that a couple of these phenomenal women are buried in unmarked graves.
Indeed.
It's criminal. When you consider what they stood for, what they did, and how they served their community, how could we have allowed this to happen? But it's not too late, is it, to give them a tombstone and to, you know, give them the appreciated love that they deserve. And I hope that someone goes away from here and makes it their hobby to do that. So
indeed.
Let me go to the bottom. Rise up, Brother Norman. He says, I was lucky to meet one of his sons in Brooklyn, USA, at one of my activist Black Party assemblies. And it must be the son of Marcus Messiah Garvey.
Indeed, we worked with Marcus Garvey Jr. when we organized the Centenary Committee in 1987. That was actually organized in Birmingham at Brother Beanie's place. Brother Beanie is one of the Pan-African Congress movement leaders. And there was myself, Brother Pepperkai, Brother Beanie, Cecil Gutsmore, a whole range of different people in the community. And as I say, you know, this is another thing I want to just bring to the attention of our people. When we all got there to form the committee, you know, the women, they all volunteered, me and Sister Imelda Inyang. Sister Imelda Inyang, by the way, was a lawyer and a Labour councillor in Lambeth at the time. And they volunteered us, put our names forward. So it wasn't till we came to now deciding who was going to be on the committee. They're all saying they didn't want to do it, but they're telling the people who must do it. This is something we need to stop. The work is there for everybody. Don't volunteer someone unless you're willing to do some of that work yourself.
Definitely. Otherwise, we burn out the few who are doing the work.
Indeed.
Here during the Garvey time, we had everybody doing the work.
Some of the work, that's
right.
Yeah,
phenomenal. Let's go over to the chat. And Brother Icon Bay, welcome. Awesome to have you in the house. He says that we can't wait for the mother to be in their rightful throne. Come on, mothers. We are here to protect you all. Thank you so, so much, beloved. Sister Katrina, she's saying, thank you, Queen Asata, for your activism and service. You know, we do. We thank you so, so much. And, you know, you've done an incredible and a phenomenal amount of work as well over the decades. And, you know, you're enjoying your senior years and still.
I am indeed. And trying to leave the work to the younger people.
You keep drying your back in, isn't it? Oh, day. Wow. But yes, you're appreciated loved by our audience members. And yeah, so thank you for that, Sister Katrina. Brother Kwame Aboje, welcome, says Mama Nzinga. I wanted to know, did Jess Fawcett and Zora Neely Hurston, were they part of the UNIA, ACL?
No, they used to speak at some of the, because Garvey would invite most of the prominent people to speak on the platform. Zora Neale Hurston often spoke on the Garvey platform. Same with the sister who campaigned against lynching. Her name escapes me at the moment, but I have a book here about her life. She was a journalist and they burnt down her office. And fortunately, she and her husband had just left the office and gone because they set fire to it, because she what is her name? I'm gonna just excuse me one sec. I'm gonna go and
Okay,
get it
yes,
because
while
we
our queen
need to know
goes
these
to get the name of this important person. Thank you for that question there, Brother Kwame Aboje.
Yeah,
Welcome, Penda in the house. Oh, our queen is back.
no worries. It's Ida B. Wells Barnett. Ida B. Wells, and this is a great book about her life and the work that she did, putting her life at total risk because she wasn't going to stop campaigning against the lynching of our people. Marvelous. Do you know there's some fantastic books online that people can read to inform themselves? Don't read so you can just say how much you know. Read so you can act and do work. There's another book by a sister called Case. It's called Set the World on Fire by Keisha N. Blaine. And it highlights all of the women who came forward to work after Garvey was deported back to Jamaica, because they were also continuing that Pan-African legacy. So yes.
And who was that by? Set the World on Fire?
Keisha N. Blaine, B-L-A-I-N.
Wow.
And this one, Ida B. Wells Barnett, A Sword Amongst Lions.
Wow.
And that's by Paula J. Giddings.
Wow. And as you say, you know, it's not just about reading about, say, the ideology and philosophies. It's also reading about the activism and the works of the activists so that we can be inspired. Like you've left me feeling even more inspired. Oh my gosh. You know, how are you feeling, family, in the chat? Have you been left feeling that there's so much more that you need to be doing? Kwame Aboje is saying, Mama Nzinga, brilliant, brilliant. Yes, indeed, absolutely brilliant. Let's scroll up. Rising up, everybody in the house. Norman says, Marcus Garvey's successes was achieved mostly in the USA. Jamaica gave him a lot of hardship. He had his own trials and tribulations in the USA as well. Anyone intending to do this work, beware. Absolutely. You know, you're going to get people coming after you when you're doing this work, and they'll come after you one way or another. So, you know, don't step on the block if you don't want it chopped off.
But just to throw in there, I mean, I remember Amy Jakes Garvey saying that when she used to go and visit Garvey, because she had to travel quite far, and because of the lynching, she always had to have her gun in her, you know, tucked away in her side. So that if anybody come, well, she won now go.
Yes, we'll take one or two with her too. I mean, these are formidable women. These are formidable, courageous women we're talking about here. Wow. Okay, let's scroll down and let's see what we've got. Ida B. Wells Barnett, Kwame Aboje is putting that name out. And Norman is saying Zora Neale Hurston was a prolific writer of literature or poetry. I can't remember which one. Okay, well, thanks for putting her name out there. Miriam.
Well, Zora Neale Hurston was the writer. Ida B. Wells was the anti-lynching campaign.
Thank you for clarifying that. Heru says, yeah, B. Wells was one of the first people to host Marcus Garvey in the USA. Okay, Ida B. Wells, rise yourself up for that. Look at the turn of events as a result of that hosting. Clive Innick has said, what was the Garvey prophecy about the 2 sevens clash? Okay. And let's see, Ida Lewis, please can Sister Nzinga tell us what she used to do before she retired? Okay, you may have missed the beginning of the show when I did read her bio, but do you want to share with them?
Yeah, no worries.
What your question was?
Okay, yeah, so I was a registered nurse and a registered health visitor, and also a family planning nurse and a teacher, fieldwork teacher. I used to train health visitor students. And then I subsequently did a Bachelor of Arts degree in social science and worked for a long time as a health visitor. I've held many jobs, to be honest. I've gone to Jamaica and worked at the Ministry of Health as monitoring officer, monitoring standards in nursing care homes and maternity facilities, and also worked at a place called 3D Projects in Jamaica for 6 months, organizing carers to go into the home and teach people how to stimulate disabled children, because at the time they were locking them in the house and not allowing them to get any kind of education. So yeah, that's me.
Oh, amazing background. And with all of those really busy jobs, very demanding jobs, being a nurse, working in, you know, the social care sector, most people end up taking their work home with them, you know, mentally, sometimes with the files and caseworks and stuff like that. And you still found time for all of that activism, plus being a mother, being a wife.
I tell you,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you, sometimes I look back at it and wonder, did you really do all of that?
Just goes to show, you know, the energy that we all possess. And so imagine if all of us was doing just even half the amount that you were doing. I mean, all of us, you know, towards the community. But sadly, it tends to be left to just a few. But I hope more people, after hearing you and the presentation that you've done, is going to be inspired.
To be honest, I actually think that everybody should put aside, even if it's 2 hours a week, that belongs to the community, and you know, to see what you can do to make things, because we are the change agents that we need in the world. Nobody else is coming to do it. Everybody has a little role to play.
Absolutely. I was reading today in Marcus Garvey's book on my show today, Message to the People, this one here, and he was saying that we should read at least 4 hours a day. And we could do that. We could do maybe 2 hours in the morning, an hour at lunchtime, and another hour in the evening. We could read 4 hours a day, because he was saying, talking about the importance of knowledge. And you're just also talking today, as well as acquiring that knowledge, the importance of putting that knowledge into practice, the importance of doing something in the community for your community. And if all of us, as you said, even just contributed 2 hours, you know, a day, or even a strong, you know, stroke week, if we just contributed a couple of hours every strong towards doing something within our community, we could help to build our community up.
That's right. Just to add to the reading, Mr. Shanice, just to add to the reading, he also says that when you're reading, you must have a book to make notes and to jot down relevant points, so that, you know, you can go back and reflect.
Absolutely.
It's such an excellent way of retaining the knowledge, but also of going back and checking things out. It's some great advice in that book.
It teaches us to critique as well. So it's not just for reading sake, but to have that understanding. Phenomenal. Let's go to the chat before I go to my notes while you were speaking. Miriam Williams, she's talking about you know, someone who was also an author and writer of Women in the Garvey Movement. Now there's been a request that I post the book Women in the Garvey Movement in the chat.
No problem.
Is there a link to where people can actually get your book?
No, it's only I've got 6 copies left. I'm supposed to be working on updating it. So you can put my email in the chat, no problem. Or
let me do that now. Let's get your email address. Family, get ready to get this email address in the chat. Let's get to the bottom here. Okay.
So it's NZ.
Oh, sorry, it's not typing. Let me. Here we go. It was doing something else. So carry on. Yeah. What's
ANZINGHA@hotmail.com. ANZINGHA@hotmail.com.
Okay. Have you got that, family? If someone could post that in the chat for me. My chat's just disappeared.
I have a chat.
Sorry?
I'll put it in there.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you so much. And then I'll post it here. Where's my I've touched something and I've lost it, so I need to go back. Here we are. I'm back in there now. Right. Okay, family. Any questions? We have, you know, a few minutes more. Here we go. ZINGA@hotmail.com. Please get in touch with our beloved sister. If you want to be the one of the 6 to get hold of a copy of that book, get in there.
I've got lots of posters. The posters are $5 and the books are £10.
Oh, a great price. £10 for the book, £5 for the posters. Yeah, I think I need to, I'm always buying them and giving them away because, this time I need to buy one to keep my sis. So you're going to be at an opportunity for me to mention this coming Saturday, Peckham Rye Park. Want to rise up Paul Grant from the Campaign for Truth and Justice. He's organising an event in Peckham Rye Park. So if you're in London, make your way down to Peckham Rye Park on Saturday. We're going to be celebrating Marcus Garvey. We're going to be celebrating the works of the group call themselves Campaign for Truth and Justice. So yeah, if you're in London, UK, make your way down to Peckham Rye Park this coming Saturday. And, if we wanted to meet you personally to get a copy of your book, where might they find you over the next couple of strongs, Queen and Zinga?
This week is totally out for me. Tomorrow I'm going to read a eulogy at a funeral. I've been invited to do that for a special friend. And then it's my daughter's birthday tomorrow as well. So it's a really busy day. Then Friday, I've got a hospital. I've got to have an operation shortly. So I've got to spend most of the morning in the hospital with the doctors. So
sending healing vibrations your way.
Indeed, thank you. Sunday I've got
say you don't need it.
So far away. I've got a christening, a great friend of mine, her grandson. So it's a busy weekend. So I won't be able to be anywhere other than those things that I've already got on. But I'm more than happy to meet up with people. I'm usually at a lot of different events.
Yes, there's community events around.
And people can email me if they want me to meet up with them for the book, or I can post the book if that's what people would like. In fact, there's a sister that's just bought a copy that's going to the Gambia this week to live. I can't remember her name. Angela, I think her name is. Yeah, she's going this week, relocating.
Excellent. Another family member, relocating to Mama Africa land.
Indeed.
Marcus Garvey said we can't give up an island for a continent.
This is so true.
We need to make sure that we find ourselves with a space on the continent. Brother Kwame Aboje says, Mama Nzinga, did Mama Amy Jacks Garvey, when she was in Accra, did she encourage our schools and colleges in Ghana to promote African history?
More than likely, knowing her. But, this is something I was speaking to somebody about today. Our people really have got to wake up now. It really is an absolute disgrace wherever we are in the world to consider that we're still teaching a load of nonsense to our children. It really is so out of order. It
really is.
And some of these countries have got such great warriors who've left such big legacies. We really have to do better. And I would say that everybody, when I go to whichever place, when I went to Ghana, I used to come off of the bus and go on bad about the white Jesus with them up here. And when I went to Ansawan with a person who I was staying with, we went to pick up his glasses. And I had nearly a little riot in the pharmacy. They had one Jesus, why may I tell you, could I make one big window big? And I wasn't having it. And I actually challenged why they had that looking at us and, how dysfunctional it was, blah, blah. And in fact, by the time we got into the big conversation, me and the pharmacist, the whole market closed down and everybody came to listen to the discussion. So that was just such a great experience. And when I came back, I actually sent them some literature, about the origins of the Bible and why we shouldn't be connected to some of the things that we're connected to, because they're actually, in my opinion, causing our spirit great damage.
It is. Yeah, the brainwashing is deep. The indoctrination is deep. And there's so much work that needs to be done, isn't there, to undo the damage that has been done to us psychologically and mentally. And, you know, many have said it's easier to remove the chains from around our feet and ankles than it is to remove the mental chains around our brain. And, you know, we indoctrinate our children into it as well.
Indeed.
And it's so hard to get
our people. You know what is most provoking?
Destroying us.
It's just trying to inform people. And it's like a shut off. They can't move past this Bible.
Wow,
wow. Boy, I'm telling you, sometimes you just despair.
I know, but we can't.
No, I don't mean you give up, but you
just. Oh, I know we don't. Yes, I'm just saying
that. You want to just give a big slap.
You'd be the last one to give up, but I know.
Be doing that.
Yeah, it's an uphill struggle, isn't it? And it's like going up a slippery slope half the time. But we've got to keep pushing, got to keep doing. So let's see what's going on here. Gary Ricketts says, "Greetings, Sister Shanice and Nzinga Asata. Great lecture. My question was, does Muhammad Ali and Marcus Garvey's Marcus Garvey's friend, was he a UNIA member?"
Who?
Muhammad Ali. This is the Muhammad Ali that was a friend of Marcus Garvey.
Or Deuce Muhammad Ali. Yes. Deuce Muhammad Ali.
He got it right.
England.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Him and Marcus Garvey did some work together here in the UK when Garvey was here.
Okay. Norman Henderson say, Clive Ali, I sent Andrew Miban and Rears up in the hills, not far from Kingston, Stony Hill, Gordon.
Oh, okay.
So if I get some
in fact, Amy Jakes Garvey's father had a number of properties in that area, just below Stony Hill. And her grandfather was the first mayor of Kingston.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, so, you know, Garveyites all the way, activists all the way, and, you know, groomed their children as well into activism. And that's what we've got to do with our children. Neander, rise up. Neander Sankofa says, give thanks, Sister Shanice, for bringing our warrior queen to minister to us today. Oh, yeah. You know what? I thank our queen for, you know, receiving the invitation, because as you've heard, she's just so incredibly busy. But we thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to minister to us today. So Deuce Muhammad Ali is something over that. Is a member to Baba Garvey, who helped him a lot. A mentor, sorry.
Indeed.
The heart's over that.
That's quite true.
Yeah. So lots of thank you, lots of fires in the chat. Okay, family, if you've got any last questions to ask, get them in quickly. Let me have a look over at my notes. You know, there was so much that I was picking up on. And yeah, I think most of it was notes for myself. Got to do more. I've got to be out there. You know, the importance of teaching African.
Sister Shanice, I think you've done your share too, because obviously we met in Offley Road doing all that fundraising and for Haiti and Zimbabwe.
And it continues. I've got to organize a fundraiser, family, for our family in Sudan. I did a show a couple of strongs ago, and I did promise that I would organize a fundraiser event, in particular for the women, the rape victims, you know, the women who have been so tragically abused by the brothers.
You know, you have to wonder what is wrong with our people. Why would you do that to your mother?
Is it Sudan or the
your
Congo?
sister?
The Congo.
It's outrageous.
I know. So deep is the.
Oh no. Okay.